Beneath the crimson hues of a foreign sky, Captain Sarah Key knelt amidst the ruins of what had once been a bustling alien settlement. Her armor, battered and scorched, was a testament to the relentless battles fought to liberate this planet from its invaders. Around her, the remnants of the settlement were eerily silent, the only sounds coming from the faint crackle of burning debris and the distant hum of her squad's search drones. Sarah's team moved cautiously through the wreckage, scanning for survivors. The air was thick with the acrid scent of destruction, but beneath it was something else, a faint, rhythmic sound. It was almost imperceptible, but Sarah's ears, trained for years in the field, caught it. She raised her hand, signaling her squad to hold position. "Captain?" Corporal Layla Tran asked, her voice low and steady despite the tension. "Do you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the sound. Layla paused, tilting her head. "Crying? But that's not human," Sarah finished. Her heart quickened as she stood and motioned for Layla to follow. Together, they navigated through the rubble, stepping over twisted metal beams and shattered glass until they reached the source of the sound. There, nestled under a collapsed structure, was a small alien child. Its large, luminescent eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and its tiny frame trembled as it let out soft, desperate cries. Its skin shimmered like liquid silver, and faint bioluminescent patterns flickered across its body, resembling the stars above. Sarah's breath caught. She had fought alien soldiers, dismantled their warships, and witnessed the terrifying technology of their kind, but this was different. This was innocence personified, a life untouched by the brutality that had engulfed its world. "It's just a kid," Layla said, her voice tinged with awe and sadness. "Captain, what do we do?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "We get it out of here." Layla frowned. "You think Command's going to be okay with that? They've been drilling us to see these guys as the enemy." "This isn't an enemy," Sarah snapped, her voice firm. "This is a child." As carefully as she could, Sarah began to clear the debris. The child recoiled at first, its cries growing louder, but she whispered soothing words, her tone gentle despite the language barrier. The child's glowing eyes locked onto hers, and something passed between them, a silent understanding that transcended words. "Captain, we've got movement nearby," Layla warned, her rifle scanning the ruins. "Might be survivors. Might be hostiles. Keep them off us," Sarah said without looking up. "I'm not leaving this kid." Layla nodded, moving to cover their position. Sarah worked quickly, lifting the final piece of rubble and cradling the alien child in her arms. Its small hands clutched at her armor, its bioluminescent patterns shifting into calmer hues. "Captain, we've got company," Layla called out, her voice tense. In the distance, the shadows of approaching figures became visible against the glow of the fires. Sarah stood, the child secure in her arms. "Then we'll show them what it means to protect." The distant figures emerged from the smoke, and Sarah's stomach tightened. They weren't human. A small group of alien soldiers, clad in battered armor and wielding makeshift weapons, approached cautiously. Their movements were deliberate, but their expressions, if Sarah was reading their alien features correctly, were uncertain, even desperate. They weren't charging to attack. They were watching her. "Captain, what's the play?" Layla's voice was tight as she kept her rifle trained on the group. Her finger hovered near the trigger, ready to act if they made any sudden moves. Sarah adjusted her grip on the alien child, who now clung to her with trembling hands. The glow of its bioluminescent skin pulsed faintly, echoing the fear Sarah imagined it felt. She raised her free hand, motioning for Layla to hold fire. "Don't shoot," Sarah said firmly. "Let's see what they want." Layla hesitated, but she obeyed, her rifle still aimed but her stance less aggressive. The alien soldiers came to a stop a few meters away, their weapons lowered but not discarded. One stepped forward, its posture wary. Its skin shimmered with faint iridescent patterns, not unlike the child's. Its eyes, glowing softly, locked onto the child in Sarah's arms. "They recognize it," Sarah muttered under her breath. She stepped forward cautiously, meeting the lead alien's gaze. "Do you understand me?" she asked, not expecting an answer. To her surprise, the alien tilted its head and emitted a series of clicks and hums. A small device on its wrist lit up, projecting a flickering hologram. The voice that followed was synthesized but understandable. "Why do you carry our child?" Sarah hesitated. She'd faced countless enemies on the battlefield, but this situation was entirely new. "I found them trapped," she said slowly, gesturing to the destroyed building behind her. "They were alone. I couldn't leave them." The alien's glowing eyes narrowed, its shimmering skin darkening as if in suspicion. "Human soldiers destroyed this place. You bring ruin, then claim innocence?" Layla bristled at the accusation. "Captain, they're trying to turn this on us. We can't trust them." "Stand down, Corporal," Sarah ordered, her tone calm but commanding. She turned her attention back to the alien. "We're not here to hurt survivors. We're clearing out enemy combatants, but we don't harm civilians. This child is alive because I chose to protect them." The alien stared at her for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Behind it, the other soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons still lowered but their tension palpable. Finally, the leader spoke again. "You saved one of ours. Why?" Sarah glanced at the child in her arms. Its trembling had lessened, and its glowing patterns now shifted in soft, soothing waves. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "War or no war, some things are worth protecting." The alien seemed to process this. Then, slowly, it gestured for its soldiers to lower their weapons fully. It stepped closer, raising a hand in what Sarah assumed was a gesture of peace. "You are different," it said. "Perhaps there is more to humans than we believed." "Captain, incoming transmission," Layla said, glancing at her communicator. "It's command. They're asking for a sitrep." Sarah sighed, her mind racing. Command wouldn't approve of what she was doing. They would see the child, and these soldiers, as liabilities, potential threats that could compromise the mission. But Sarah wasn't about to let this situation escalate into more violence. She turned back to the alien leader. "Do you have somewhere safe for this child? A place where they won't be caught in the crossfire?" The alien hesitated, then nodded. "There is a shelter nearby. Hidden. We can take them there." Sarah met its gaze, searching for any hint of deception. She saw none. "Fine," she said, stepping forward. She knelt and carefully handed the child over. The alien took the child gently, cradling it as though it were something precious. The child's glowing patterns shifted again, becoming brighter, more vibrant. It recognized its own. The alien leader inclined its head towards Sarah. "You saved a life today, human. Perhaps you are not the monsters we believed." Before Sarah could respond, the rumble of approaching vehicles shook the ground. She turned to see the silhouettes of human armored transports cutting through the smoke, their cannons bristling with energy. Layla stiffened. "Command's reinforcements," she said. "Get out of here," Sarah told the alien leader, her voice low and urgent. "Take the child and go." The alien nodded, motioning for its soldiers to retreat. They moved quickly, vanishing into the ruins with the child in tow. Sarah stood and turned to face the incoming vehicles, her jaw set. The reinforcements arrived moments later, soldiers disembarking with weapons drawn. A tall officer strode forward, his gaze sharp and scrutinizing. "Captain Keene," he said, his tone clipped. "Report." Sarah straightened. "Enemy combatants neutralized in this sector, sir. No survivors left in the immediate vicinity." The officer's eyes narrowed as he scanned the area. "You're sure?" "Yes, sir," Sarah replied firmly. "The area is clear." The officer regarded her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Move out. We've got other sectors to sweep." As the reinforcements departed, Layla turned to Sarah, her expression conflicted. "You lied to command." Sarah glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I did what was necessary." Layla shook her head but couldn't hide the hint of admiration in her voice. "You're one hell of a leader, Captain." Sarah didn't respond. Her gaze lingered on the direction the aliens had fled, a quiet determination burning in her chest. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt like they might be fighting for something more than just survival. The campfire crackled softly in the ruins of an abandoned settlement, casting flickering shadows across the stone walls. Sarah sat on a makeshift bench, her rifle resting across her lap, her eyes scanning the dark horizon. Her squad was scattered around, taking a rare moment to rest. Layla was patching up her armor, while the others quietly ate rations, their faces drawn but resolute. The events of the day lingered in Sarah's mind: the alien child, the soldiers, the silent pact made in the ruins. She had lied to command, a risky move that could cost her everything, but she felt no regret. That child had been innocent, and those soldiers had shown something unexpected: trust. Layla broke the silence. "You think those aliens made it out safely?" Sarah looked at her, then back to the horizon. "I hope so. I still don't get it," Layla continued, her tone quiet but probing. "Why risk so much for them? They're the enemy. Command wouldn't hesitate to put a bullet in all of them." "They weren't the enemy in that moment," Sarah said. "That child wasn't holding a weapon. It wasn't a threat. And those soldiers, they were protecting it. Not fighting us." Layla shrugged. "I just don't think Command would see it that way." "They don't have to," Sarah replied. "Sometimes you just have to trust your gut." Before Layla could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the shadows. The squad snapped to attention, weapons raised, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Sarah held up a hand, signaling them to hold fire. From the darkness, a figure emerged. It was the alien leader from earlier, its shimmering skin glowing faintly in the firelight. Behind it stood 3 more alien soldiers, weapons holstered, their hands raised in a gesture of peace. The squad bristled, but Sarah stepped forward. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low but firm. The alien leader inclined its head, its bioluminescent patterns shifting into what Sarah had come to interpret as calm. "We came to speak," it said through its translator. "And to thank you? You're risking a lot coming here," Sarah said. "If my command finds out." "They will not," the alien interrupted. "We took precautions." Sarah studied the group for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Talk." The alien leader glanced at its companions, then back at Sarah. "You showed us something today. Compassion. It is not something we thought humans capable of." Sarah crossed her arms. "Maybe your people need to stop judging ours by the worst examples." The alien tilted its head, considering this. "Perhaps. But your act today saved one of our young, a precious life. For that we owe you a debt." Sarah frowned. "I didn't do it to earn a favor." "Yet you earned one nonetheless," the alien said. "The shelter we fled to was destroyed. The child is safe, but we cannot stay here. The enemy will find us." Sarah's heart sank. "What do you want from me?" "To help us leave this place," the alien said simply. "Our ship is hidden in the northern mountains, but the enemy patrols the region. We cannot make it on our own." The squad behind her exchanged uneasy glances. Layla stepped forward. "Captain, this is dangerous. If Command finds out, we're done." Sarah turned to her squad, her gaze steady. "If anyone wants out, now's the time to say so. I won't hold it against you." No one moved. Layla sighed. "Guess I'm in. Someone's gotta watch your back." The rest of the squad murmured their agreement. Sarah turned back to the alien leader. "We'll help you. But this is a one-way trip. Once you're off this planet, you're on your own." The alien inclined its head again. "Understood. And thank you?" The journey to the northern mountains was grueling. The terrain was harsh, the night bitterly cold, and the enemy patrols relentless. Sarah's squad moved with practiced efficiency, keeping to the shadows and avoiding unnecessary engagements. The alien soldiers proved to be skilled fighters, their movements precise and silent. For once, humans and aliens fought side by side, united by a common goal. The child, carried by one of the alien soldiers, remained eerily quiet throughout the journey. Sarah caught glimpses of its glowing eyes, wide and curious, as it peeked over the soldier's shoulder. She couldn't help but wonder what it must be thinking, what it must be feeling in the midst of all this chaos. They reached the base of the mountains just as dawn began to break, the first light of day casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. The alien leader stopped, scanning the horizon. "The ship is close," it said. "But the enemy will know we are here." As if on cue, the sound of engines rumbled in the distance. Sarah turned to see a convoy of enemy vehicles cresting a nearby ridge. Her squad scrambled for cover as the vehicles opened fire, plasma bolts scorching the ground around them. "Layla, take the left flank!" Sarah shouted. "Daniels, cover the rear! Keep them off us!" The squad sprang into action, their training kicking in. Plasma fire and kinetic rounds lit up the battlefield as humans and aliens fought side by side against the overwhelming enemy force. The child clung tightly to its protector, its bioluminescent patterns flickering with fear. Sarah pushed forward, her rifle blazing. She caught sight of the alien leader fighting fiercely, its movements a blur as it took down enemy soldiers with precise strikes. Despite the chaos, their forces were holding the line. "Captain?" Layla's voice crackled over the comms. "The ship's visible. 2 clicks ahead." Sarah glanced toward the mountains and saw it, a sleek, alien craft hidden among the rocks. Relief surged through her, but it was short-lived. The enemy was pressing harder, their numbers seemingly endless. "We don't have time for a prolonged fight," Sarah shouted. "Get to the ship! Go!" The group began a desperate push toward the craft, the enemy's fire growing more intense with each passing moment. Sarah stayed at the rear, covering her squad and the alien soldiers as they advanced. She could feel the heat of plasma bolts zipping past her, the ground exploding under her feet. Finally, they reached the ship. The alien leader activated a panel on its side, and the ramp lowered with a hiss. The child was carried aboard first, its wide eyes fixed on Sarah as it disappeared inside. The alien soldiers followed, their movements hurried but controlled. Sarah turned to her squad. "Go with them! Secure the ship!" Layla hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off," Sarah said. "Go!" Layla nodded reluctantly and led the rest of the squad aboard. Sarah turned back to face the enemy, her rifle raised. She stood her ground, firing shot after shot as the enemy closed in. The ramp began to rise behind her, and for a moment, she thought she wouldn't make it. Then, a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her aboard. She turned to see the alien leader, its expression unreadable but its actions unmistakable. The ramp sealed shut, and the ship's engines roared to life. As they lifted off, Sarah collapsed against the wall, her chest heaving. The alien leader stood beside her, its glowing eyes fixed on hers. "You saved us," it said. "We will not forget." Sarah nodded, too exhausted to speak. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that this alliance, however fragile, might lead to something greater. The alien ship streaked through the sky, breaking free from the hostile terrain of the northern mountains. Its sleek design hummed with barely audible energy, cloaked from enemy sensors, as it ascended into the upper atmosphere. Inside, the tension was palpable. Sarah leaned heavily against the bulkhead, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. Her squad stood nearby, equally exhausted but on high alert. The alien child, now nestled in the arms of its protector, emitted soft, calming hums. Its glowing patterns flickered in rhythm, seemingly mirroring the ship's vibrations. Sarah found herself staring at it, marveling at the innocence it radiated despite the chaos that surrounded them. Layla approached, wiping sweat from her brow. "Captain, we've cleared the atmosphere. No signs of pursuit." "Good," Sarah replied, her voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "Let's make sure it stays that way." The alien leader stepped forward, its luminous eyes focused on Sarah. "Your actions today were not those of a soldier following orders. They were those of someone who values life beyond duty. For that, we owe you more than thanks." Sarah pushed off the bulkhead and met the alien's gaze. "I didn't do this for thanks. That child deserves a chance to live, just like anyone else." The alien nodded slowly. You have shown us something we did not expect from humanity. Something we doubted existed. Sarah tilted her head. Compassion? The alien's glowing pattern shifted, resembling the soft flicker of distant stars. Hope. Before Sarah could respond, the ship's AI emitted a soft chime. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the room, displaying a nearby planetary system. The alien leader gestured toward one of the planets, a lush green orb suspended in space. Our people have a sanctuary here, it said. Hidden, secure. The child will be safe. Sarah nodded, relief washing over her. Then let's get you there. The ship's descent into the sanctuary world was smooth, the atmosphere glowing faintly as it parted for the craft. Below, dense forests and glittering rivers stretched as far as the eye could see. Small settlements, blending seamlessly with the natural environment, dotted the landscape. As the ship touched down in a clearing, the alien soldiers moved quickly, securing the area. The child, still clutching its protector, turned its wide, glowing eyes towards Sarah. For a brief moment, it reached out a small hand, its bioluminescent patterns flickering in what could only be described as gratitude. Sarah hesitated, then gently touched the child's hand. You're safe now, she said softly. The alien leader watched the exchange, then spoke. You have done more than rescue a life today. You have shown us that humanity is capable of more than destruction. Perhaps there is a future where we stand together. Sarah glanced at her squad, who were quietly observing the exchange. If there's a future where we stop fighting and start understanding each other, I'd fight for that. The alien leader inclined its head. Then perhaps this is not goodbye. Perhaps this is the beginning. As the ship prepared to leave the sanctuary world, Sarah stood at the ramp, gazing out at the alien landscape. Layla approached, her expression thoughtful. Captain, she said, do you think Command would have approved of any of this? Sarah smirked. Not a chance. Layla chuckled softly. So what now? No, Sarah said, her tone resolute. We go back and keep fighting the war the way we have to. But maybe, just maybe, we fight for more than just survival. Layla nodded, her eyes drifting toward the sanctuary. You think they'll be okay? Sarah's gaze lingered on the child, who stood in the distance with its protector, its glowing patterns dancing like fireflies. They'll be okay, she said. Because we gave them a chance. The ramp sealed, and the ship ascended into the stars. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a sense of purpose beyond the battlefield. The war wasn't over, but humanity had taken a step towards something greater. They had become protectors, not just of their own kind, but of the galaxy's future. As the stars streaked past, Sarah allowed herself a rare smile. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were showing the galaxy what it truly meant to live,